Avowed is a fantasy RPG created by Obsidian Entertainment, the minds behind Fallout New Vegas, grounded in Pillars of Eternity. The game is set in that Pillars of Eternity universe, but gives you a first and third person real-time combat experience. Xbox gave me 2 hours of a hands-on preview of Avowed on PC. I turned that into an 8-hour playthrough. Let's see if Avowed lives up to the hype. Avowed is coming to Xbox, PC, and Game Pass, and the Xbox console version is set to run at only 30 FPS at launch. I played this version on PC at full 4K 60 with ray tracing on, and with my 4080 Super, I needed DLSS on performance mode. The game strikes visuals in between Bethesda titles and a more realistic or slightly more serious Dragon Age presentation. Characters look a bit frumpy, but highly detailed. But their stylization is going for more of a realistic, grounded approach than full fantasy. In other words, not everyone is going to be gorgeous, except for Kai. Xbox gave me access to the Dawn Shore location, which is just one of several biomes that are available, and Obsidian Entertainment said the game isn't an open world, but it's quite spacious in a large explorable area full of enemies, just in this one biome. There are organic quests that you can pick up along the way. You can set up camp at many of the Adra waystones, which are spotted along each of the small open biomes. Here you can level up your gear and craft before heading out, and this also refills your health. The game encourages you to go anywhere and up and over with a verticality system in place with parkour, and there are enemies entrenched in different locations, and they don't just materialize or spawn in because they're in set locations. Once you've cleared them out, they usually don't come back. You can find caves that you can enter, in each area of the biomes are level set, so you will happen upon enemies with 1 skull or 2 or 3 over their heads, saying you're underlevel or not equipped to take them on. But there's gear everywhere, and crafting items to pick up from falling enemies or chests or lockers. Combat has seen many improvements over the past several months, and Obsidian really worked on the tactile feel and feedback of first-person melee. This is a pain point for most games that attempt to do first-person melee as organic as a game like Avowed. We're going to get into the combat and weapons and tools you use to dispatch enemies, but first we need to talk about how unbelievably and surprisingly beautiful and gorgeous the world of Eora is in Avowed.
Too soon. Views like this remind me why I came to the Living Lands in the first place.
Dawn Shore is just one of many locations you'll go to, and if you can see the scale here, each one of them gives you a ton of explorable playgrounds. The graphics in Avowed in Unreal Engine 5 still have a whimsical look to them, and the choice of color splashes in various locations above or underground and even underwater look absolutely stunning. The build here in Unreal Engine 5 is really demanding for newer hardware, and I suspect that Xbox will have to wait months into the year of 2025 to get a 60 FPS patch on Xbox after making concessions. And Dawn Shore is just one biome that I had access to, but the rocky Dawnfall-esque wilderness kingdom was a joy to walk among and find crafting materials while I looked for enemy encampments. The interior levels, where the lighting system really shines. The warmth and absorption of reflected lighting and the dynamic day-night cycle really brings it to life with soaking sun, beautiful shadow work, and bioluminescence. And when you get into the nighttime, with a hulking sky dominated by a gigantic moon and the aurora borealis. The sense of scale is great, and knowing this is just one biome we'll see, and the UI is not intrusive, it lets you soak in the visuals and see how a fantasy game can take realism and stylize it to create a varied and beautiful location to level up your character. Sadly, there is no photo mode, and Xbox has had a problem putting photo mode in their games most of the time. And Obsidian had a photo mode in many of their other games, but taking screenshots with the UI in the way is not as fun. Of course, there are going to be story beats and characters that you will encounter that will flesh out the lore and the story of Avowed, but the combat is really what everyone wants to know about. And the first-person melee combat, in this build, I only had access to 2 switchable weapon loadouts, and I tended to stay with the Grimoire on one hand and a one-handed melee weapon, and the other being a two-handed weapon or a bow or a flintlock rifle or a heavy sword. The magic is brought up with left trigger, and using the D-pad you can send out fire, ice, electricity, poison, and a special magic attack that is on a cooldown that unlocks with your character. The character builds give you so much variety and customization where you could choose any class you want to in the beginning, and you'll still usually have access to most of the magic and combat tactics as long as you start slotting points into those talents and level up your character evenly. The one that became an instant favorite for me is the first-person Hogwarts Legacy-style wand. The wand has impact, and the sound paired with a Grimoire range combat, it really feels satisfying. The game is actually very, very challenging, and I died several times while I played this demo, and since the game allows you to travel across any location, you run into enemies that are tiered above your level or above your current gear set, and you'll find yourself using risk or reward to attack bigger enemies to see if they drop bigger and better gear. When you're low on health though, you can always go into your inventory mid-combat and consume a ton of crafting materials or healing items on the fly, but you can choose the up D-pad to take a health potion or down to refill your mana for magic. Sword and mace combat feels really great. Obsidian improved the game with the real-time first-person combat by adding a feedback where your weapon feels like it's dragging across the enemy and slowing down just a bit as it drags across their body. So you feel like you're hitting the enemy instead of ghosting through them. The sound, along with this feedback, makes the first-person combat feel really great. Now, I know when people watch the combat, they're gonna say it looks bad or it doesn't look enjoyable, but you have to feel it. It's not perfect, and most first-person melee games usually aren't, but I really enjoyed how the first-person combat felt. The firearms are surprisingly satisfying as well. The slow to load times, as they're flint-like rifles, they do hit hard, and if you have the appropriately leveled gear, you'll take down enemies while you combo this with magic. Most of the gear that I came across in this 2-hour demo that I stretched to 8 hours was usually common or slightly above common, and I was able to level them up at least once at my camp. But I did find a couple of higher level legendary weapons as I completed some side quests or went off the beaten path. Gear is available to you in open natural locations, but also available if you start digging or looking around, breaking through barriers, burning through brambles, or getting on top of locations using the parkour system, which is pretty forgiving and allows you to move a little bit in midair. You will encounter mini bosses all over the open biome, and within my playthrough, I encountered several bosses, one being a grizzly bear, large ghosts, bandit leaders, all who had a ton of health and strong attacks. I was really concerned about the third-person combat, especially. Everyone wanted to know, well, especially me, wanted to know what the third-person mode would look like. You can't get to third person outside of a toggle within a menu of a menu, which means you'll have to pause the game, go down the settings, drop all the way down to where the toggle is for on and off, apply, and come back to the game. This build is 3 months before launch, so I would hope by then they would add a first person and third person toggle on the controller, or maybe just in the first pause menu. Personally, third person mode is not the best as your character slides around a bit or skips, and some of the animations are not complete or fully fleshed out. But if you take time to get used to third-person combat, especially using a wand or swords, it's actually a great way to see the game with a wider field of view, and watching your character sword slash or magic throwing is really enjoyable. But there's something special about playing a game like this in first person, seeing your weapons up close, your enemies even closer, taking them down face to face. And lately, gaming fans have required games to only be in third person. I think what's here right now is pretty good in third person mode. It needs to be improved, and hopefully we'll see it get better, but I don't mind playing in third-person mode as it is right now. Your companion, which is in this build, available is only Kai, and he's more of a passive companion as you cannot stop and have conversation with him while you're in the open world. You can't equip your companion or unload your gear on them, but at camp you can strike up a conversation and learn more about them, yourself, or the location you're currently in. As you're out in the open world, there are gauntlets that you'll have to traverse, explorable locations which will use a bit of critical thinking, setting up switches, or finding ways around locations that look like they're not accessible. The world truly does feel interactive. At sometimes it can feel a little bit barren as you look for enemies. There are many situations in the game that feel a lot like segments of the game Skyrim, although Obsidian Entertainment has strikingly said that Avowed is not supposed to be like Skyrim. You'll find many similarities, and I think they struck the right balance of a classic RPG like Skyrim and making Avowed feel like its own. A few hours into my time with Avowed, I was able to find a Dawnstar-style fire sword, which was so visceral to use on enemies, and the blur of the flame while the weapon swung and set enemies on fire. I felt like I could get the upper hand on them, even if they had skulls over their heads. There was a bit of narrative here in the preview, which I won't talk about now, and I'm actually saving that for my full playthrough when the game comes out in February, so I skipped some of it, but there is a bunch of exposition and lore already available to you with NPCs talking to you in real time. There's also choice that comes with your character class or choice in dialogue that can make a difference when you find enemies or NPCs in the world. You can get quests for them, or you can exchange or trade dialogue decisions that can open up narrative choices or keep you from a combat situation with a uncooperative NPC. The art style and the music really come together. The music is really incredible in Avowed. I can't really showcase it here, but lately Western developers typically have not struck a memorable soundtrack in their games, or just put it so far back into the background, or make the music so infrequent. But Avowed really brings it to life with music that soars or enchants as you're walking around the world or creeping through dungeons and caves. This is something I haven't enjoyed in a long time, and Avowed's vibe and tone and mood and music is really spectacular. The varied locations and beautiful art style, even in just one biome available here in Dawnshore, really gives promise to Avowed being an immersive and satisfying fantasy RPG with great exploration and combat, which isn't perfect, but was always so enjoyable in the creativity and choice of mixing weapons, magics, and grenades. Avowed has used a clever use of throwing weapons like grenades by picking up fireball plants, electric shock explosions, meaning you can use the right bumper to throw ranged grenades at enemies to close the gap with magic grimoires, and getting close and personal with heavy and strong charge attacks with a melee weapon. I have no idea what is going on in the world of Aora, and for Avowed with a limited preview that was only supposed to be 2 hours, which I stretched to 8, for 2 or 3 days, I couldn't put Avowed down. I was really cautiously optimistic that Avowed would be a game I would love, and I typically love fantasy RPGs like this, and I love the work from Obsidian Entertainment. Now, if they can polish up things over the next couple of months and flesh out an incredible story and continue to offer creative choice in this fantasy RPG, I think Avowed might surprise, shock, and delight everyone when it launches February 18th, 2025. This is Colteastwood. Thank you so much for checking out this preview. Avowed. Well, I think it's going to be great. I don't know how amazing Avowed's going to be. I kind of have a number in my mind about how it's going to review. I think it's going to do okay. I mean, Outer Worlds was really, really great and got a certain score. I kind of think it's in there, but I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I'm still cautiously optimistic about it, and I really enjoyed it. Really thankful for that opportunity to check out the game and let you guys know how it feels. If you end up enjoying this video, let me know by liking and subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell to be notified of new weekly content. If you want to join the channel membership, you can do that by hitting the join button below, and that'll get you early access for videos before they go up and get you entered in monthly merch giveaways, so much more. Check out the Patreon. We also have some tiers there to support the channel and get access to things like that. Also, we have the XC podcast where we'll talk about the weekly gaming news and the leaks and rumors and everything. And that's at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Also, I'm creating content on TikTok. Some of it I am using from videos. If you've missed some of the content I'm making, or you want to watch a 1-minute segment, I'm putting 1 to 2 videos on there. No foot videos. I'm not, anyway. But yeah, TikTok stuff that is actually just going to be produced content. Like if you like the video work I'm doing here and you want to see 1-minute segments like that, I just put out one about the Fable information that I don't have on the channel. So check me out at Colteastwood there. And you could also stay here on YouTube for more content. But I want to know what you think of Avowed and the combat. How does it look like it feels? Is it what you expected? Or do you think you're going to like Avowed? Let me know in the comment section. And while you're there, please be nice.